B'siyata d'shmaya, we're going to learn Beitza Daf Beis. We're going to start from the very first Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Beitza shenoilda b'yom tov. The first topic we're going to be discussing in Masechet Beitza is a topic associated to muktzah and to noilad. Noilad is something that is born. That means something that was laid, that first came into being on Yom Tov. So an egg that was laid on Yom Tov, Beis Shammai omrim toichal, or Beis Hillel omrim lo soichal. Beis Shammai say you're allowed to eat it on Yom Tov, and Beis Hillel say you're not allowed to eat it on Yom Tov. After Yom Tov you can eat it. And we're going to have to see in the Gemara why there should be an issue one way or another with an egg laid on Yom Tov. And now that the Mishnah has said a case where Beis Shammai are more lenient than Beis Hillel, which doesn't happen that often, so the Gemara is going to bring the Mishnah is going to bring another two examples where Beis Shammai is more lenient in the halachas of Yom Tov. Beis Shammai omrim sa'ir b'kazayis v'chometz b'kakoiseves. We know that on Pesach one's not allowed to eat sa'ir, which is leaven, is an agent that makes the dough ferment, and chometz is a regular chometz. And so Beis Shammai say that to eat sa'ir, which is the stronger type of a chometz, there eating a kazayis you already get punished. However, eating regular chometz, it's only if you eat a larger measure of a date. Beis Hillel omrim zeh v'zeh b'kazayis. Beis Hillel are more stringent, and they say even chometz, as with sa'ir, you're only chayav if you eat the size. You're already chayav if you eat the size of a kazayis, and you don't have the leniency that eating chometz is only when you've eaten the size of a date. Another kula of Beis Shammai, hashoichet chayav v'oif b'yom tov. We know, and this is discussed in Maseches Chulin, there's a parak called Kisui Adam, but there's a chiyuv that when a person shechts either a bird or a chaya, not a behema, a chaya, then one has to cover the blood with some earth, and that is the mitzvah of Kisui Adam. The chiyuv of Kisui Adam. What happens if on Yom Tov somebody shechts? One's allowed to shecht on Yom Tov. It's oichel nefesh. On Shabbos, there's 39 melachos that are osir. On Yom Tov, some of them are osir, some of them not. Shlita happens to be one of those that are not osir. However, digging in the ground is a problem on Yom Tov. So the question is, if you're going to do shlita on Yom Tov, how are you going to cover the blood with earth? Beis Shammai say, yachboir bedeker, you can dig with a spade, and use the earth to cover the blood. Beis Hillel says you're only allowed to shecht if you had the earth that was prepared from before Yom Tov, and that way you would not have to dig it up. The Beis Hillel agree that if you did shecht, then the Gemara is going to explain this is providing that the spade was already in the ground before Yom Tov. You're allowed to take out the earth and cover it on Yom Tov. And in the event that you had an oven with ashes inside it, then one's allowed to even lekatchila use those ashes and lekatchila shecht and rely on those ashes for kisei adam she'efer kira muchanhu, because the ashes in an oven are considered as being designated for Kisei Adam should it be necessary. And we're going to see that in the Gemara later. Says the Gemara, B'mai oskinon. We're now going to start the first few daf. We're going to speak about the first two lines of the Mishnah. Beitza shenoilda b'yom tov, an egg that was laid on Yom Tov. Beis Shammai say toichal, Beis Hillel say loy soichal. So the question first is, what are we talking about here? What type of an egg? Or more accurately, from what type of a hen? If the hen was a type of a hen that was designated to be used for eating, and on Yom Tov, we're not talking about Shabbos, this is Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, this chicken, this hen, is not muktzah. The hen itself is not muktzah. He's going to shecht it at some point, and it's considered like a food item. So, why would Beis Hillel say that an egg that was laid from a hen that in itself is considered an oichel, a food item, why should it be also to eat the egg on Yom Tov? Uchla de ofrashu. And this is a concept we're going to see a few times, and that is that any part of a food, which is part of another food item. Anything that comes from something that's considered a food is considered a food item in the same status as the thing it was coming from. That's uchla de afras here. So if the chicken itself, if the hen itself is oichel, because it's a type of a hen which is a medes le'achila, then there's no reason in the world that, at least in the question of the Gemara, there's no reason that the egg should be osur. Elo, it must be, but it must be a type of hen which is not designated to be shechted and eaten, rather it's a hen which is designated just for laying eggs. In which case, if he's not intending to shecht it, then the hen itself is muktzah. And the question is, if the hen is muktzah, what's now the halacha when the hen lays an egg? Is the egg also muktzah? Is it not muktzah? So that we have a machlokes. Beis Shammai say toichel, Beis Hillel say lo toichel. My tamayu to Beis Shammai. What is the reason? Why does Beis Shammai say one's allowed to eat this egg muktzah? If it comes from a chicken, from a hen, which is muktzah, then the egg is also going to be muktzah. And there's an interesting opinion of the Baal HaMoyer here, but this is how the Shita Mukubetzes explains it. Since the egg comes from a hen, which is muktzah, the egg also becomes muktzah. So why does Beis Shammai say that you're allowed to eat the egg? It should be muktzah. Says the Gemara, "My tamayu." You're asking why Beis Shammai says you're allowed to eat it. Umay kushya, what's bothering you? Dilma Beis Shammai leslu muktzah. Maybe Beis Shammai hold that they hold that there is no issa of muktzah. At least in these circumstances, we've learned extensively in Masechet Shabbos that there's a machlokes Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda whether regarding muktzah. According to Rabbi Shimon, there's no muktzah in most cases. According to Rabbi Yehuda, there is muktzah. Maybe Beis Shammai is following the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, and there is no muktzah. So nothing isn't. The egg is not muktzah. We'll soon see. Even the hen is not muktzah. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you what my question was. Kosol Kedaitin, we assumed that afilu man deshari b'muktzah, even Reb Shimon who says that muktzah is not an issue, b'noilad osur. Because regular muktzah, why do we say that muktzah, according to Reb Shimon, is not a problem? Is because anything which is fit to be used, we assume a person does not set it out of his mind, and it's part of a person's consciousness that he may end up using it, so it's not muktzah. The word muktzah means it's been set aside, it's been put out of his mind. The person doesn't shift anything out of his mind if potentially he could use it. But that's only if it's here. But something which is being newly born on Yom Tov, or Shabbos for that matter as well, then when the Shabbos came in, then he didn't even know, he didn't see it here, he didn't know about it, it wasn't even existing yet. So he couldn't have his mind on it. You don't have your mind on something that doesn't exist. And therefore it's a more stringent form of muktzah. So I may have thought, says the Gemara, that even Reb Shimon who says there's no issue of muktzah, there will be an issue of noilad, which means that there would be nobody who would say that the egg is allowed to be even moved. It's muktzah. So how can Beis Shammai say toichel? So my tamayu to Beis Shammai. So what's the source or what's the reason behind what Beis Shammai say that you're actually allowed to eat this egg? So the Gemara is going to have 4 different explanations as to why, according to Beis Shammai, you're allowed to eat it, and why, according to Beis Hillel, you're not allowed to eat it. Omar of Nachman. The first one is the opinion of Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, "La'olam b'tar negoyle so imedes legadil beitzim." We're talking about a hen which is muktzah. If the hen was oichel, there's no muktzah, as we said before. It's the egg was then, it's uchla de ofrasu, and therefore it's not muktzah. So we're talking about a hen which is muktzah, and therefore if you hold of muktzah, the egg is also muktzah. And if you don't hold of muktzah, then the hen is not muktzah, even though it's noilad. Because whoever doesn't hold of muktzah doesn't hold of noilad either. Your assumption to start with, that even Reb Shimon, who does not hold of muktzah, does hold of noilad, the issa of noilad, it was a mistake. Says Rav Nachman, Lo'ilam b'tar negoyle so yimedes legadol beitzim. U'de islei muktzah, the opinion who holds that there is an issa of muktzah, which is Beis Hillel's opinion, islei noilad, he obviously also says there's an issa of noilad. U'de leslei muktzah, but Beis Shammai who hold that there's no muktzah, they are following Reb Shimon. Leslei noilad also holds that there's no issa of noilad, and Beis Shammai Reb Shimon, or Beis Hillel Reb Yehuda. So the first explanation is that Beis Shammai says that you can eat it because he doesn't hold of muktzah, he doesn't hold of issa of noilad. Beis Hillel say that there is muktzah, and therefore the hen is muktzah, and the hen is muktzah the hen is muktzah because it's oimid legadol beitzim, and the egg is also muktzah, and therefore Beis Hillel say lo seichel. Asks the Gemara, Umi Omer of Nachman Hochi. Does Rav Nachman actually hold that according to Beis Hillel there's an issa of muktzah? Votnan, this is going to contradict another Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman himself is going to contradict himself. Votnan, there's a Mishnah. It says in the Mishnah, Beis Shammai oimrim magbihin me'al hashulchan. This is a Mishnah regarding Shabbos. It's not regarding Yom Tov. Regarding Shabbos, what happens if you have on the table either bones that are no longer edible, or shells, or the peels of nuts or other peels which are no longer edible? They would fit into the bracket of muktzah. So what happens if you have this muktzah on the table? So the Tanakhama say, but Magbiin, Beis Shammai say, Magbiin me'al hashulchan, you're allowed to lift off the table at tzomei klippin. There's no muktzah. Beis Shammai don't hold of muktzah, which this so far conforms with what we just saw, that according to Beis Shammai there's no muktzah. Beis Hillel say no, there is an issa of muktzah, and you should not move the atzomos or the klippin, but with your hands. Rather what? Mesalikes hatavlo kula, you can lift up and remove the whole tabletop, which has the status of a kli, it's not muktzah. Umenara, and you can shake off the tabletop from the muktzah, but you shouldn't actually touch the muktzah with your hands. And this is the opinion of Beis Hillel. So that's the Mishnah, the original version of the Mishnah. V'omar Rav Nachman, this is where Rav Nachman comes to play. Rav Nachman says, Onu, us, and he had this tradition from his Rebbes. Ein lanu elo Beis Shammai k'Rabbi Yehuda or Beis Hillel k'Rabbi Shimon. We hold the other way around. That Beis Shammai say that you're not allowed to remove the muktzahs, and Beis Hillel say you are allowed to remove the muktzahs. So you see there clearly that Rav Nachman and the tradition he had was that Beis Hillel says that there is muktzah, that there's no muktzah, sorry. Beis Hillel says there's no muktzah, and Beis Shammai says there is muktzah, and that's exactly the opposite of the way Rav Nachman explained our Mishnah. So to put this question in other words, why is it, according to Rav Nachman, that Beis Shammai say you're allowed to eat a freshly laid egg on Yom Tov, but they say you're not allowed to move the bones and the shells off the table? And why is it that Beis Hillel say you're not allowed to eat a freshly laid egg because it's muktzah, but they say you are allowed to remove the bones and the shells from the table? This seems to be a contradiction, at least according to the way Rav Nachman is learning it. Omer Lecha, Rav Nachman answers the Gemara. Rav Nachman will tell you that there's a fundamental difference here. There's a difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov. That our Mishnah is talking about Yom Tov. Over there, Beis Hillel say there is an issa of muktzah. Regarding the shells and the bones, there it's talking about Shabbos, and regarding Shabbos, Beis Hillel say there's no muktzah. Why would we entertain the idea of such a difference? Before explaining it, why would we think of that? Says the Gemara that we're going to find two Mishnayos. Rabbi, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, who organized the Mishnayos, when he wanted a halacha to be clearly known that is the halacha, he would quote that halacha anonymously. It's called a stam Mishnah, an anonymous Mishnah. So we're going to find an anonymous Mishnah in Shabbos that says there's no muktzah, an anonymous Mishnah by Yom Tov that says there is muktzah. And we know that halacha is always like an anonymous Mishnah. And we also know that when there's a machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, the halacha is almost always like Beis Hillel. So there shouldn't be a contradiction between the two. It was clear to Rav Nachman, and it's clear to what the Gemara is saying now, that there's a fundamental difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov regarding muktzah. That regarding Shabbos, Beis Hillel, the halacha is that there's no muktzah, and regarding Yom Tov, there is muktzah. And then the Gemara is going to explain how we would understand the difference, but that's the difference. Let's see this inside. Omer Lecha Rav Nachman, Gabi Shabbos, since the Mishnah regarding Shabbos, the Sosam Lontana, then Rabbeinu HaKadosh, who wrote the Mishnayos, he brought in anonymously Reb Shimon, he brought a Mishnah that says that there's no muktzah, which is the opinion we know is Reb Shimon. Ditnan, because we saw in the Mishnah, Mechatchin es hadluin lifnei habehema. The one is allowed to cut this vegetable, which detached, obviously it's not in the ground anymore. You're allowed to cut this delas for the behema, and we don't say it's an unnecessary effort, something which is asur on Shabbos, it's mutter. Ve'es hanavela, and a carcass, you're allowed to cut it lifnei klovim, in order for the dogs to be able to eat it. Anything which is animal food is not muktzah. But when Shabbos came in, then this animal was still alive. It wasn't animal food. It only died on Shabbos. So it became muktzah on Shabbos, and it was muktzah when Shabbos came in, and therefore it stays muktzah, even though now potentially it could become animal food. Since when Shabbos came in through Bein Hashmoshes, it was muktzah. It stays muktzah the whole Shabbos. And nonetheless, the Mishnah says that you're allowed to cut as an avela lefnei klovim. What's with muktzah? Clearly, the anonymous Mishnah holds that there's no muktzah on Shabbos. Moikim lo lebeis Hillel kereb Shimon. And that's why when Rav Nachman has to, in the Mishnah that we saw before with the shells and the bones, where we have to decide what does Beis Hillel hold, Rav Nachman was almost forced to say Beis Hillel must hold that there's no muktzah, because so there shouldn't be a contradiction with this anonymous Mishnah, and therefore he switched around the opinions in that Mishnah. Aval gabe Yom Tov, however, regarding Yom Tov, the Sosam Lontana, there, Rabbeinu HaKodesh, he brought a Mishnah, an anonymous one, that held that there was muktzah. Tana Kereb Yehuda. Ditnan, we learnt in a Mishnah, and it's a Mishnah regarding Yom Tov, where it says there, Ein mevak in eitzim min hakoros. If you have beams of wood that were designated to be used for building, they're clearly in the bracket of muktzah. You're not allowed to split them on Yom Tov. Even though you're allowed to put firewood into an oven on Yom Tov, you're allowed to do that, but not if it's muktzah. So if you've got these beams that were designated and put out of mind for the duration of Yom Tov, when Yom Tov came in, during Bein Hashmoshes, they're muktzah, and therefore ein mevak, and you should not split those eitzim on Yom Tov min hakoros. You shouldn't split some wood from these beams. V'lo min hakoro shenishbaro b'Yom Tov, or if you had a branch that was attached to the tree when Yom Tov came in, and only on Yom Tov it became detached from the tree, and now potentially it could be used for firewood, then in that case, it says in the Mishnah that v'lo min hakoros shenishbaro b'Yom Tov, that means clearly there's an anonymous Mishnah that says that muktzah is an issue. There is muktzah, the is of muktzah on Yom Tov. And therefore, when Rav Nachman had to decide what to do, or when Rav Nachman explained our Mishnah, Beitza Shenoildo b'Yom Tov, with Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, Moikim lo leBeis Hillel Reb Yehuda. Rav Nachman explained that Beis Hillel in our Mishnah that says that you should not use and you may not eat the egg on Yom Tov holds like Reb Yehuda that says that there's an Isser of Muktzah. So far Rav Nachman has been explained. Now the Gemara is going to try and understand why should we differentiate between Shabbos and Yom Tov. We understand Rabbeinu HaKodesh did that, and Rav Nachman followed suit to make sure that all the Mishnayos fit with each other. He explained our Mishnah that way. He changed over, he turned around the Mishnah in Masechet Shabbos. But what would be the understanding of this? Mechti, man sos mele masnisin, who put down these anonymous Mishnayos? Rabbi, it was Rabbeinu HaKodesh who put together, compiled the Mishnayos that we have. Ma'ishna b'Shabbos, the sos amnon kereb Shimon, or ma'ishna b'Yom Tov, the sos amnon kereb Yehuda. So we understand the halacha must be that on Shabbos there's no muktzah, on Yom Tov there is muktzah. What would be the logic of that? Answers the Gemara, Omri, Shabbos Chamira. Shabbos in and of itself is a very stringent or more stringent type of day. There's many more malachas and other stringencies. And therefore, if there's a certain leniency there regarding an Issad Rabbanon of Muktzah, that we can hold like Reb Shimon, that there's no Issad Muktzah on Shabbos, that would not cause them to be disrespectful and to undermine the other areas of Hilchos Shabbos. And therefore, Sasanon Reb Shimon, Demekel, Rabbi did not have an issue with ruling like Reb Shimon that there's a leniency regarding Muktzah on Shabbos. However, Yom Tov Dekil, Yom Tov, which is a more lenient type of Yom Tov, one's allowed to do certain malachas, one's allowed to do anything to do with oichel nefesh, which one needs to prepare food on Yom Tov, that is allowed, even though then it's transgressing what would be a malacha on Shabbos, and therefore and therefore if we're also going to be lenient with muktzah, people are going to disregard the entirety of Yom Tov and its halachas, and therefore Sosanon Krev Yehuda de Machmir, therefore Rabbeinu HaKodesh he put down that Rabbi Yehuda, we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda on Yom Tov, that there is an Issa of Muktzah. And therefore Beis Hillel, who's always the leader in halacha, is in our Mishnah says, Lo yisoichal, you should not eat this egg because it's Muktzah. So continues the Gemara. So let's go back to our Mishnah. We had a Mishnah that says that a freshly laid egg on Yom Tov, Beis Shammai say you can eat it, Beis Hillel say you can't eat it. And how did we explain that? If Beis Hillel say you can't eat it, it must be that the hen itself is muktzah. Because if the hen itself was oichel, if this was a hen that was designated to be used for food, then Beis Hillel would agree that the egg is considered just as a piece of that food called a hen, and it wouldn't be muktzah. So it must be that we're talking about it must be that it's a type of hen which has been designated not to be used for food on Yom Tov, and therefore it's muktzah, or mishum muktzah. So then the question is, if that's the explanation, as Rav Nachman said, between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, whether we do hold of muktzah or don't, if you're already arguing regarding the egg, it would seem that exactly the same argument would apply to the hen itself. According to Beis Shammai, who says there's no muktzah, then the hen itself also is not muktzah, you'd be allowed to eat it. Regarding the Beis Hillel, who says that there is muktzah, and therefore the egg is muktzah, then the hen is also going to stay muktzah. Answers the Gemara that the reason the Mishnah chose to discuss the egg over the hen is in order to impress on us that even the egg, where the egg, besides for being a regular muktzah, coming from muktzah, it's also got the added aspect and issue of being noilad, that was all even more removed from our minds. It wasn't even here when Yom Tov came in. Nonetheless, according to Beis Shammai, the benoilad shori, that even noilad is mutter. In the Gemara Daf Beitza Daf, in the Havamin of the Gemara entertained the idea that even if you hold muktzah is mutter, noilad should be asar. Rav Nachman didn't agree with that. But in order to impress on us that even noilad is mutter according to Beis Shammai, then that's why the Mishnah spoke about the eggs. Asks the Gemara, "V'liflugei b'tarnagoyles v'loidiacha koichon to Beis Hillel the muktzah asiri." Why don't you say on the contrary? Let's the Mishnah speak about the hen and say that Beis Shammai says that the hen is not muktzah, and Beis Hillel says that even the hen which is not noilad is muktzah, to impress on us an element of chiddush in Beis Hillel. Why are you choosing to speak about the egg and impress on us the chiddush of Beis Shammai? Why don't you speak about the chicken and impress on us the chiddush of Beis Hillel? Are you going to suggest koyach de'atera odif, that always the power to be lenient has an advantage over the power to be stringent? Anybody can say something is asa, but to say something is mutter, you have to be really confident that that's actually the halacha, that it's mutter. And that's a rule in Shas, koyach de'atera odif. And if so, we can understand why the Mishnah chose to speak about the egg to tell us the koyach de'atera, the power of the lenient opinion of Beis Shammai, that even when there's noilad, he's mekel, he's lenient with the egg on Yom Tov. The Gemara says, okay, so if you had to choose between the egg and the hen, I understand why you're speaking about the egg. But nonetheless, I've got a question. V'nifleg b'tarvayu. Why didn't the Mishnah mention both? And say as follows: Tarnagoyles ho'imedes legadol beitzim, a hen itself which is muktzah because it's been designated to lay eggs, not to be eaten. It itself, the hen, ubeitzasa, and any egg it would lay on Yom Tov. The Beis Shammai imrim seichel. Beis Shammai say that one can eat both of them. Not only the hen, there's no muktzah, but even the egg, there isn't even noilad. Or Beis Hillel imrim lo seichel, and Beis Hillel say not only can you not eat the egg, but even the hen, which is not noilad, the hen was there from before Yom Tov, also is muktzah. Why did the Mishnah only speak about the egg and not about the hen? So, and this is going to remain a question against Rav Nachman's understanding that the Mishnah, the argument in the Mishnah, is an argument regarding muktzah. If it's muktzah, why have you split the hen from the eggs? And there's not going to be an answer to this question. And this is actually going to be the reason, as we see now, Ela Omar Rabba, that Rabbi is going to have a different explanation to the Mishnah to explain the machlokes, that Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai are not arguing regarding muktzah. They're actually talking about a hen which is not muktzah. We're talking about a hen that's been designated to be eaten on Yom Tov. It's not muktzah. Nonetheless, the Gemara asked a question, if it's on Amud Aleph, that if it's not muktzah, then the egg should also not be muktzah. Then why does Beis Hillel say you're not allowed to eat the egg? So that is going to have now three explanations, another three explanations in the Gemara, Rabbi, Rav Yosef, and Rabbi Yitzchok, to see why, according to Beis Hillel, even though the hen is not muktzah, and even though this egg came from the hen, and therefore it should be considered just as something that's been detached from a food, which in itself has the status of a food, nonetheless, Beis Hillel say you should not eat this egg on Yom Tov. We're going to have three explanations. Let's start with this first one, Omar Rabbi. Rabbi says, this is talking about a hen which is not muktzah. And therefore we understand why the Mishnah doesn't speak about the hen. Because everybody says that a hen that's been designated to be eaten on Yom Tov is allowed to be shechted on Yom Tov, and you can eat it on Yom Tov. There's no issue with it. The whole issue is only the egg. And Rabbi says that our Mishnah is discussing primarily, even though it speaks about Yom Tov and doesn't tell us what type of Yom Tov, is talking about a Yom Tov which is on a Sunday, which means the day before Yom Tov was Shabbos. And now we have an issue. Why? Let's see inside. Umishum hachona, this is famously known as hachona de Rabba. This is the opinion of Rabba about hachona. Hachona means preparing. So, are you allowed to prepare from Yom Tov, from Shabbos to Yom Tov, from Shabbos or Yom Tov to a weekday, from Yom Tov to Shabbos? Generally, you're not allowed to, it's osa. However, there's an added element here in Rabba. Ukasova Rabba says, Kol beitza de misyaldo ha'idna. Any egg that's laid today, me'etzmel gormrola. When did this egg become completely fully formed? When did it become ripe, so to speak, and ready? When did it become completed? The day before. So in this Mishnah, Beitza Shenoldo b'Yom Tov, Yom Tov is on Sunday. When did the egg get prepared? The day before, which was Shabbos. So we had a Yom Tov meal that was prepared on Shabbos. And the Rabbi says that Shabbos and Yom Tov meals must be prepared on a weekday. If they're prepared on a Shabbos or Yom Tov, then you're not allowed to eat it on the following day on the Shabbos or Yom Tov. V'Rabba l'tamei, and this is Rabba following his opinion to Omar Rabba. That means Rabba that explained our Mishnah that is talking about an egg that was laid on Yom Tov but prepared the day before on Shabbos, and that's why, according to Beis Hillel, lo soichal, you're not allowed to eat this egg. Is Rabba l'tamei de Omar Rabba ma'idechsiv. It says in the pasuk, v'hoyo bayoyim hashishi, talking about a regular Friday, and you should prepare what you've brought via Mishnah, you have to prepare the meal of Shabbos on Friday. And Rabbi understands from there that chol meichin l'Shabbos, v'chol meichin l'Yom Tov, prepare for Shabbos on a weekday, day before. Prepare for Yom Tov on the weekday, the day before. Ve'ein Yom Tov meichin l'Shabbos, but Yom Tov should not prepare for Shabbos, ve'ein Shabbos meichin l'Yom Tov. And Rabbi holds that even though the hachana was done b'dei shomayim, Hashem was the one that completed the egg the day before inside the chicken's stomach, or inside the chicken. We didn't do it. It wasn't as if a person did hachana the day before, which was an issa. No, even though it was Hashem who did it, there's halacha that Shabbos and Yom Tov meals have to be prepared on weekdays. Ve'in Shabbos mechin el Yom Tov. Therefore, says Beis Hillel, a Yom Tov which is on a Sunday and the egg gets laid on a Sunday, it was prepared on the Shabbos, you're not allowed to eat it. Omale Abaye now challenged Rabbi and said, Elo me'atos, according to you, Rabbi, the whole issue is not that it was laid today. The issue is it was prepared yesterday, and yesterday was Shabbos, not a weekday, which means a regular single day Yom Tov, which is not on a Sunday. Elo me'ato Yom Tov be'alma tishtari. If Yom Tov is on a Monday, and it's a freshly laid egg, it should be mutter. What should be the problem? And the mother's not mukta, and this is just coming from the mother, from the hen. What should be the problem with it? According to the way Rabbi explained it. Says the Gemara, Rabbi answers, Gezeira mishum Yom Tov achar Shabbos. You're right. Really, there's no issue with eating this egg on Yom Tov. But if we allow you to eat an egg that was laid on a Yom Tov on a Monday, then when Yom Tov is on a Sunday, you'll also come to eat it. And that would be very serious. According to Rabbi, it's also min ha-Torah. It's learned from a pasuk. A meal that was prepared on Shabbos, it's also min ha-Torah to eat it on Yom Tov. And in a gezerah that we shouldn't chas v'sholem eat an egg that was prepared on Shabbos, the following day on the Yom Tov on Sunday, we say any Yom Tov, an egg that's laid on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to eat it. Asks the Gemara, Shabbos de Alma, what about regular Shabbos? And even though the any chicken is muktzah, any hen is muktzah on Shabbos, and however an egg shouldn't be muktzah on Shabbos. And we know that an egg is muktzah. Why is it muktzah? If there's no problem with the egg itself, the only problem is if it was prepared the day before, if Yom Tov was on Friday. But a regular Shabbos where Friday is not a Yom Tov, then what should be the problem with eating this egg? Tishtari, it should be mutter. Answers the Gemara, Gzeira mishum Shabbos achar Yom Tov. It's a Gzeira because if Shabbos were to fall on the day after Yom Tov, if Friday was a Yom Tov, it would be an Issa D'Oraisa to eat this egg on Shabbos. And therefore we say any Shabbos, an egg that gets laid on Shabbos, you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos. Because the Pasuk says that were it to be prepared on the Yom Tov the day before, Min HaTorah, you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos. And the Chazon Ish discusses what the Gemara was suggesting, why the egg should be okay if on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, if the mother was not designated to be used for laying eggs, if the mother's there to be eaten, then it's not muktzah, because you can shecht it and eat it on Yom Tov. But on Shabbos, any live chicken, any live hen is muktzah. So if so, why is the Gemara suggesting that the egg should be okay? That's something discussed by the Chazon Ish. Continues the Gemara. Umi gozrinon? Do we really make such a gezerah that in order to avoid a case where Shabbos or Yom Tov is after a Shabbos or Yom Tov, where a meal for Shabbos and Yom Tov was prepared on a day other than a weekday, on a regular day, that we say that it's Osa, Gzeira, because maybe you'll get confused with a day when it would be Osa? V'atanya, did we not learn in a Brisa? So what happens if somebody shechts a chicken, a hen, on Yom Tov? It didn't lay an egg, but he shechted this hen, and he found an egg inside it. The Brisa says you're allowed to eat the egg. If you're going to say that we make a gzeira, that to take care, make sure that chas v'shalom you shouldn't make a mistake of eating a meal that was prepared not on a weekday, ligzer mishum hanoch to misyaldin b'yemen. Why don't you say that this egg that was found inside the hen on Yom Tov should be also to be eaten on Yom Tov as a gezerah? Because if the egg would be laid on Yom Tov, not that you found it inside, if the hen actually laid it, we said here that there's a gezerah. So why don't you say that if you find an egg inside the hen, that it should be an issue? And Rashi explains that the main question is not a regular Yom Tov. You found a Yom Tov on a Monday, on a Tuesday, you found an egg inside the stomach of a hen, that it should be also. Why? Because it should be also otu if it was laid. And if it was laid, it's also otu if it was laid on Yom Tov that's on a Sunday, which is an Issa D'Oraisa. Rashi says that wouldn't really be such a big question why we don't make such a gzeira, because we have a rule, that, and Rashi explains where we learn it from, that you don't make a gzeira for a gzeira. You only make a gzeira to prevent us from getting confused with an Issa D'Oraisa, not a gzeira ligzeira. However, Rashi explains the question of the Gemara is that we're talking about Yom Tov which was on a Sunday. And had this egg been laid, it would be an Issa D'Oraisa to eat it, as Rabbi said. But it wasn't laid. It was found inside the hen, which means that it wasn't finished the day before on Shabbos. It was obviously this egg got fully formed today on Yom Tov. That's okay. So, because the main issue is that it's being prepared on a Shabbos for a Yom Tov or Yom Tov for a Shabbos. But if it's prepared on Yom Tov for Yom Tov itself, in and of its own, that wouldn't be a problem. You're allowed to prepare food on Yom Tov. The problem is that the question is, make a gezerah that if you find it inside the hen on a Yom Tov on Sunday, it should be aser otu if it was laid on Sunday, and then it would be seriously aser. Answers the Gemara, Omalei, Beitzim Gemurais b'mei imon milsa de lo shchichi. It's very uncommon to find an egg which is fully formed inside a hen. And umilsa de lo shchicha, something which is uncommon, leigazru barabonon, the Rabbanon did not make any gzeras, and therefore you found it inside the hen on Yom Tov, you can eat it gesundheit. So that was the second explanation in the Mishnah, that the reason Beis Hillel say that you're not allowed to eat the egg that was laid on Yom Tov is because it's talking about specifically a case of a Yom Tov on a Sunday, and Rabbi says a Yom Tov on a Sunday, if the egg was laid on Sunday, it was prepared on Shabbos, and it's an Issa D'Oraisa. Continues the Gemara. Now we're going to have another two explanations, Rav Yosef and Rabbi Yitzchok, that are very similar, and we'll see in the Gemara where they differ and why they differ. But there's another two explanations why, even if you don't hold of this Gezerah D'Rabba, which means that we're talking about regular Yom Tov in the middle of the week, either you don't hold of Gezerah D'Rabba, or we're talking about a case where it's a regular Yom Tov on a Monday, Tuesday, where the day before is not a Shabbos, and we're talking about an hen which is not muktzah, because it's a hen that has been designated to be used for food, and nonetheless, an egg that comes out of a hen is laid on Yom Tov in and of its own. There's a gzeira, there's reason to say that you should not be allowed to eat it, and we're going to explain, and that is why Beis Hillel say, Lo Seichel. Rav Yosef Omar Gzeira Mishum Peiros Hanoishrim. There's a klal, a rule, that fruits of a tree that fell off a tree on Yom Tov, or on Shabbos for that matter, you're not allowed to. They're muktzah on Shabbos. Why should they be muktzah? They're not attached to the tree anymore. Nonetheless, the Chachamim said you're not allowed to eat on Shabbos and Yom Tov fruits that fallen off a tree, because we're afraid that if you allow them to, as Abai is going to explain, Omalei Abaya, Peiros Hanoishrim Tamamai. Why indeed did the Chachamim say you're not allowed to eat from fruits that were detached on Shabbos and Yom Tov? Is Gezerah Shema Yale V'Yitloish, because if it would be mutter, you'll say, oh, this apple fell off the tree and we're allowed to eat it, I'm going to climb up the tree and pick an apple. And picking an apple is one of the Lamates Melachos. Gezerah Shema Yale V'Yitloish, you might go up on the tree and pick an apple. To avoid that, we say any fruits that fell off a tree on Shabbos or Yom Tov, you're not allowed to eat them. So that means anything that was attached to its source and then became detached, like fruits, is muktzah, is also. And therefore, this is what Rav Yosef saying, therefore Beis Hillel says in our Mishnah, in the same way as an egg, the same way as a fruit that's detached from a tree is muktzah on Yom Tov, so too an egg that becomes detached from its hen is also muktzah on Yom Tov. Asks the Gemara, gufa gezerah. An apple that fell off a tree is only a gezerah. There's no real muktzah on it. It's only asr because a gezerah you might come to pick it. And now you're saying that otu, that gezerah, there's another gezerah that an egg that gets detached from a hen will be asr. We don't make a gezerah le gezerah. Answers the Gemara. Kula v'hi gufa gzeira v'anan neikim v'nigzer gzeira legzeira. Answers the Gemara, kula chad gzeira. It's one gzeira. When the Chachamim said, when they made the gzeira in order to stop people picking trees and picking apples, they made the gzeira, they said anything that gets detached from its source on Yom Tov is asa. And they had in mind also eggs, which are similar to a fruit that's being detached. Rabbi Yitzchok Omar. Rabbi Yitzchok says on a similar theme to Rabbi Yosef, but says that an egg coming from a hen is not necessarily compared to a tree, an apple falling off a tree. Rather, it's compared to juices being squeezed out of a fruit. Rabbi Yitzchok Omar Gzeira Mishum Mashkin Shezovu. Because on Shabbos, one of the Lamates Melachos is to squeeze. You're not allowed to squeeze on Shabbos. But if the juices came out on their own, then there should be no problem with it. It's not muktzah. Nonetheless, there's a gzeira mishum mashkin shezovu, that liquids that flowed out of their source are also muktzah on Shabbos. Omar le Abaya. Abaya responded to Rabbi Yitzchok in a similar way that he responded to Rav Yosef. Mashkin shezovu. Why did Chachamim say that juices that flowed out of their source is ta'amemai? What's the reason that it's asa? Gzeira mishum shemo yischot. Because it's a gzeira, you might come to squeeze them. He gufa gzeira. Juices that on their own oozed out of the fruit is only a gzeira. Vana neika menigzer gzeira le gzeira. You're extending that gzeira and making a gzeira onto that gzeira, saying that even an egg that comes from a hen is similar to juices coming out from a fruit that should also be. Also, we don't make a gzeira le gzeira. Answers the Gemara, Kula chad gzeirahi. When the Chachamim said, you're not allowed to use, it's muktzah, any juices that come out of their source, they had in mind anything that gets detached from its source, including an egg that's getting detached from the hen. Continues the Gemara. The Gemara is now going to explain that we have four opinions here. We had Rav Nachman that explained bis Hillel that the reason you're not allowed to eat the egg is because of muktzah. We're talking about an hen that was muktzah. Rabbi says the hen wasn't muktzah, but we're talking about a Yom Tov that's on a Sunday, and there's a problem of hachana. Rav Yosef and Rabbi Yitzchok say that the reason bis Hillel say you should not eat the egg is because of a gzeira, either peris hanoishrim or mayim or mashkim shezovu. Kulu Rav Nachman loy omri. The reason that Rabbi, Rav Yosef and Rabbi Yitzchok don't agree with Rav Nachman's explanation, kikushon, like we asked. The Gemara said before, according to Rav Nachman, why is the Mishnah focusing primarily on the egg and not on the hen as well? Karabba nami lo omra, and the reason that the others don't hold of what Rabbi said, hachona de Rabba, is because hachona les lehu. Either they don't hold that if something was prepared on Shabbos for Yom Tov by Shomayim, not by a person, but by Shomayim it was prepared, that they say that it's not, there's no issa to that, it's not also to eat it on Yom Tov, or they disagree with what Rabbi said, that an egg that was laid on Yom Tov was actually prepared and formed the day before on Shabbos. That's what the Tzlach suggests. But that's how they explain this, that they didn't hold that the issue of Hachona de Rabba would explain Beis Hillel. Elo Rav Yosef ma'itama le'omak Rabbi Yitzchok. We have Rav Yosef and Rabbi Yitzchok, that they both said that the reason you're not allowed to, according to Beis Hillel, you're not allowed to eat the egg on Yom Tov is because a gezerah, it's either similar to fruits falling off a tree or to juices oozing out of a fruit. So the question is, why did Rav Yosef choose to compare the egg to fruits, and why did Rav Yitzchok choose to compare the egg to juices? Elo Rav Yosef ma'itama le'omak Rabbi Yitzchok. Why did Rav Yosef not want to say like Rabbi Yitzchok? What did he have against comparing an egg to juices? Omer lecha beitza uchla, or peres uchla. Fruits and egg have something in common. They're both food items, they're both solid. Lafuke mashkin delav uchla. Juices is not a food, it's a drink, it's not a solid, it's a liquid. And therefore we would not compare an egg to the juices. Rabbi Yitzchok ma'itama le'omak Rav Yosef. Why did Rabbi Yitzchok prefer to compare the egg to the juices oozing out than to the fruits falling off the tree? Omer lecha, I'll tell you that beitza belua or mashkin beluim. The common denominator between the juices and the egg is that they're both absorbed, so to speak. They're both within their source. Either the juices are within the fruit before they're squeezed out, and the egg is within the hen. Lafuke peres, however, the fruits falling off a tree, the megalu v'kaimri, they were all there. Then they can be seen and they're visible to everybody, and therefore we do not compare the egg to the fruits, rather we compare the egg to the juices. So Rav Yosef understood that when they made the gezerah of peres shenoishrim, they said any solid that comes off its source is included in that gezerah. And Rabbi Yitzchok claims no. Rabbi Yitzchok says it's not any solid, it's only something which is visible, excluding an egg. The gezerah of mashkin, so Rabbi Yitzchok says anything that was absorbed in its source is included in gezerah mashkin, including an egg. And Rav Yosef says no, gezerah mashkin is only for liquids, not for solids. And in Yitzchak Hashem in the next shiur we're going to continue from here.